Welcome to Cook the Garden Podcast, your weekly audio source for delicious and easy garden fresh recipes and growing tips. I'm your host, Janine Grays. Let's cook the garden. Hello, and welcome to Cook the Garden Podcast. You're listening to Season 2, Episode 7. I'm so thrilled to be joined today by my friend and fellow food blogger, Amy Katz. Amy is also a certified vegan nutrition health coach with a passion for helping people live healthier, more sustainable lives. Amy has a wealth of knowledge and experience when it comes to creating delicious, nutritious meals that are good for both your body and for the planet. Since April is Earth Month, I thought it would be fitting to have Amy here today to discuss all things plant-based diets and sustainability. We're talking about the biggest misconceptions about plant-based eating to practical tips for incorporating more plant-based meals into your daily diet. Amy also shares one of her favorite garden fresh recipes, and I've actually tried it myself, guys, and I've made it several times since recording this episode, so I'm sure you're going to love it as well. So sit back, relax, and get ready to be inspired. Okay, hello. Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to Cook the Garden Podcast. I'm so excited today. We have Amy Katz, my amazing friend, food blogger, and vegan health and nutrition coach. Amy, hello. How are you today?
Hi, Janine. Oh, it's great to be here. I'm so excited to talk to you.
I'm so super excited to have you on. First of all, I'm a huge fan. And
thank you.
I love, I just love everything you put out into the world. I love your content. And, Amy, we've gotten a chance to get to know each other a little bit through the Clubhouse app. And I've learned so much from you. So I'm super just honored that you said yes to being on my show. So thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you. It's my pleasure. Yeah, yes. I always enjoy talking to you, and I love your podcast, and I always learn so much from you.
That truly means a lot. So, as you know, I know you're also a listener of Cook the Garden Podcast, and we're super big on growing our own food here. So before we really jump into this conversation, because I'm so excited to have this conversation with you, we want to know, inquiring minds want to know, what are you growing? First of all, do you have a garden? And if you do, what are you growing, or what do you plan to grow this year?
Yeah, I do have a small garden. I live in a house that has a small backyard. So we are able to take advantage of that space and grow quite a few things. So year round, we have a Meyer lemon tree, and we also have a lime tree that it's some kind of hybrid variety, but we're not really sure what it is. But the limes are larger than what you'd find at the supermarket, and they tend to be juicier, and they're kind of like I know where you live you have key limes, so they kind of look like the same color as key limes, but they're much bigger. But they're fantastic. I love having citrus, so I can add that to recipes, and
absolutely,
it's great. And then this past year, we also added a little dwarf navel orange tree and a kumquat tree. So the kumquat tree produced a little bit of fruit, which was really good. And the orange tree has some blossoms on it right now. So we're excited about that. So, I don't know how long it takes to produce the oranges, but, eventually. And then we also have an avocado tree that it's a variety called a Fiesta avocado. And unfortunately, it has not produced any fruit yet, but I hear that it can take like 7 or more years. So,
Yeah.
fingers
Yeah.
crossed, we'll actually get some fruit. But the tree itself is looking really good. And then one thing that I have, it was kind of my one of my quarantine hobbies that I started was I started growing some vegetables and herbs hydroponically. So
Ooh,
so it's
tell
really
us about that.
absolutely. So I have a hydroponic garden tower that's from a company called Let Us Grow, and they have these towers where you can plant either the seedlings that you purchase from them, or you can plant your own seeds in a growing medium, and then you just pop them in these little holes in the farm stand, and it's on a timer so that the water with the nutrients in it kind of cycles through and waters everything. So you only have to add water about once a week, maybe a little more in the summer. And then everything gets watered, and you can grow quite a few different things. So I actually haven't been doing much with it at the moment because all of the rains that we had in the winter kind of, like wiped out a lot of it because we had some heavy storms. But I am planning on starting it in a few weeks. And I think I'm going to grow, I like growing an assortment of greens, like different lettuces, and then like Swiss chard and kale, maybe spinach. But I also like growing cherry tomatoes. That's one of my favorite things to grow. So, I get some different varieties and some kind of dwarf cherry tomato plants so they don't overtake the whole thing. And then also like mini cucumbers and strawberries. And then I love to have an assortment of herbs. Like I'm planning on planting mint and chives. I love parsley and cilantro. And then later in the summer, I'll plant some basil. So yeah, it's
Nice.
pretty easy. And, it's fun just to go out there and, it's really not very much work because you only have to take care of it like once a week, but it does produce, quite a bit. So, especially for, herbs, like adding to all your favorite recipes. And it's just great. I love it.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think I've seen that particular product, the Lettuce Grow. And for those of you listening, I will definitely include a link to that information in the show notes as well, in case you want to look that up. But that sounds so intriguing. And so do you have that set up is that in your home, or do you have that outside?
I have it outside, but you can grow indoors. They also have these LED grow lights that attach to it. So if you're in a climate, especially where you can't grow outdoors during the winter, you could grow indoors instead. And I know a lot of people have success with that. But I'm in Southern California. So for the most part, we have a lot of sun throughout the year. It's just this past year that it's been particularly rainy,
Yeah.
and windy, and the plants don't like that so much. But you can actually grow, all 12 months of the year outside.
That's so amazing. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Of
And I
course.
see you're cooking the garden too with all of that. You've got your
Yeah.
citrus, you've got your herbs, your lettuces, your leafy greens. That's amazing. And I actually think you might be in the same zone, although I'm on the complete opposite end of the country.
Hmm.
I'm in Florida. I'm the East Coast, but I'm actually in zone 9B. Does that
Okay.
sound familiar to are you in that
I'm in zone 10A.
10A? Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So
yeah, very
close.
similar. Yeah, close.
Yeah.
Very similar.
Yeah.
Very similar. Well, that is awesome. I'm really excited to hear about all you've got going on in your garden. I've got a few of
Yeah.
those same I've got the Meyer lemon
Mm.
and some kumquats as well. We're in Florida, so we've got to have the citrus.
Oh, absolutely.
And we're really enjoying the orange blossoms. Those are actually edible as well.
Oh,
Like the orange
yeah.
blossoms, or you can put them, they're really pretty on charcuterie boards, and you can
Oh,
make your food really
yeah.
pretty with that floral. So
Oh, that's
just
a great idea.
a really nice tip for that as well. So all right. Well, let's jump into this a little bit. It's Earth Day week. I say Earth Day week because I've got a series out right now about, just how to incorporate more plant-based meals, plant-based, foods in general into, your lives, into your meals. And it's so easy. It's especially if you're using, like fresh ingredients from your garden or your CSAs or, farmers markets. And, I love to talk about this because there's such a tie into sustainability, right? And just caring for our earth. But before we
Yes.
really dive into it, can you give the audience just a little bit of background? I teased a little bit that you're a food blogger, and guys, like, her food is just like I drool every time I look at her content. It's absolutely amazing. But tell us a little bit about your food blogging, what you offer on your blog, but then also you're also a health coach, right? Like you're a vegan
Yeah.
health and nutrition coach. So just talk a little bit about what you do on that front and how those two are tied in together.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, so my blog is called Veggies Save the Day. And, I do share all vegan recipes, but I really create recipes that everyone can enjoy. So you don't have to be vegan. And, they're not like recipes using like strange ingredients or anything like that. They're really accessible to everyone. And, again, you don't have to be vegan to actually try the recipes on my site or to visit it. I try to appeal to everybody, no matter where they are. So, say someone, is vegetarian or vegan. Of course, they're going to find recipes that will fit into their lifestyle. But I love sharing my recipes with people who simply want to incorporate more fruits and vegetables into their routine. Because, I think we all know that we can eat better, for our health and for the planet if we, look towards, whether we grow our own food or shop, locally, like you said, at a farmer's market or get a CSA box. And, I think that ties into the sustainability with choosing less processed foods and foods that have to travel farther to get to us. Of course, like none of us are perfect, but we can all do our little parts to, help both ourselves, in terms of our health and for the planet. So, again, it's like start wherever you are. If you want to just incorporate more plant-based foods into your diet, start with things that you already know how to make. Like maybe you like making pasta once a week. So you can easily take your favorite sauce and just add some more vegetables to it. Maybe instead of a meat-based sauce, go for a sauce that has more vegetables, like maybe some mushrooms, or maybe you want to do like some legumes like lentils or chickpeas. So there's really like so many things that you can do without trying to just throw away all of your normal routine and start from scratch. You can really start wherever you are.
I love that you said that. And that's one of the reasons why I just really enjoy your blog and your content because it's so relatable. It's not like, you're driving down people's throats like this concept. I think the term vegan has just gone way just the other direction. It's really more of like a gimmick, right? And so I love that you bring it back to, just infusing more fresh produce, fresh ingredients into your diet, and it can just be you know, just like what you said, let's, bring in more of those fresh ingredients into your sauces, like one thing at a time, right? Like baby
Yeah,
steps, and about
absolutely.
getting healthier too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, just because I'm vegan doesn't mean that you have to be vegan.
Right.
That's a personal lifestyle choice, but, everyone can work towards eating better and, like you said, choosing more fresh foods. And, one of the things that I really enjoy is basing my recipes on a Mediterranean diet. And
Oh,
I don't know if you know this, but traditionally a Mediterranean diet was more plant based. People going back hundreds of years, and some of these areas like Greece and Italy, they didn't have a lot of like meat and dairy, so they naturally ate more plant based. And I think
absolutely.
that it was just maybe they had a garden. And they had their fresh herbs and greens, maybe potatoes, things they would grow like that. And then they would have very little meat and dairy, which they'd use more as a seasoning. So I think if we think about that way of eating, like that Mediterranean diet way versus like the standard American diet where we have our plate divided up with, a piece of meat and then a starch and then a vegetable. I think if we look back towards, the way that people used to eat, I think that we can find a lot of inspiration that way.
Oh my gosh, I love that you said that. And I appreciate that you brought that up because I think, that's gotten lost. And when you think about it, like, I just think about our ancestors. They were on plant-based diet before plant-based diet was a thing, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So yeah, that you hit that spot on. So one of the questions, it's so funny. I think we're on this topic, so this is a really great segue to a question one of our Facebook community members wanted to know was, and I thought this was a good question because I hear this conversation happening a lot, but what's the difference between plant-based versus vegan, or is it the same? Like, do you have any insight into that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, I do hear that a lot. And I think it is really confusing too. The term vegan means that you don't use any animal products. And that's not just in your diet, but also in your whole lifestyle. You try to avoid hurting animals, as much as possible. I mean, of course, none of us are, 100% perfect, but, someone like myself who's vegan, I'm going to look for, shoes and clothing that don't include animal products. So, I stay away from like leather and silk and wool. Whereas, when you're talking more plant-based, that's strictly about what you eat. But the term plant-based is also kind of confusing, or it can be, because it means different things to different people. So maybe someone who is plant-based, they mean that they predominantly eat a vegan or vegetarian way. But maybe they occasionally have, foods that are animal derived. It could also mean someone who is very strict about only eating foods that are not animal based, but maybe they also, they're focused on the health aspect of it. So maybe they also try to avoid excess oils and sugar and things like that. So, I think the term plant based can be very confusing because people can kind of interpret it the way that they like. Even when you go shopping, a lot of groceries, it's a big, kind of catchphrase these days to use the term plant based. And it
Yeah.
doesn't, there's no standard to what that plant based means. So, I
Right.
think like, you really have to like look at ingredients, but, in the true sense of the term, the way I think of it is that it's not going to be, many any of the processed foods.
Right.
It's going to be more like we were just discussing, like the whole foods. So,
Yeah.
like a lot of produce and, beans and legumes and whole grains, herbs and spices, those kinds of foods.
Absolutely. Thank you for addressing that question. I thought that was a really good question, and
Yeah.
I've been seeing a lot of conversations around that. And I always go back to this whole, oh goodness, we have so many labels that we put on ourselves, right?
Right. Right.
And, I always go back to, doing what's best for you and your family and your health.
Mm-hmm.
You have people that have different sensitivities or allergies towards things. And, I think at the end of the day, it's really all about nurturing yourselves, but also like, you know, having a healthier, um, diet, just introducing more of those fresh veggies into, produce into your diet. And it could be just the smallest things, maybe instead of grabbing that bag of chips, go for some, veggie chips instead of, like the processed chips or
Yeah.
whatever, like,
Yeah.
grab those, like apple chips that you can make in your dehydrator or your air fryer
Mm-hmm.
or your, kale chips or spinach chips, that kind of stuff. Just little steps that we can each take um, to just live a healthier lifestyle. And then, maybe diving deeper into the lifestyles, like what you mentioned with the vegan life. It's more of a lifestyle. It's how you
Yes.
live your life. It's more than just the food, although the food is a big component of it. It's
Right.
how you decide to spend your dollars, the products that you purchase, how you live your life. So I appreciate you really just kind of delving into that.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think, it's hard when people feel that, they have to have an all or nothing approach. And I
Yeah.
think that, for the health of the planet and for our bodies, I think it helps to just, like I mentioned before, start where you are. And, it's just because I eat a certain way doesn't mean you have to eat a certain way. And like you said, the difference between just, the whole entire lifestyle, like no one can switch to that overnight. That's just
Exactly.
unreasonable, but everyone can add more healthy fruits and vegetables, into their life. And, one of the things that I like to talk about is, just trying new ingredients. Like you mentioned, you have a kumquat tree and I have a kumquat tree, but, a lot of people have never tried a kumquat. They don't
Yep.
even know what it tastes like. So, just trying these new foods and seeing like, hey, I do like this, or maybe I don't like that. But, everyone can like visit, even if they only have access to a regular chain supermarket or maybe like a Walmart, for shopping. I think that all of these stores, these days, what's so exciting is that they are all showcasing a lot more foods in the produce aisle than we used to see, years ago. So I think it's really fun and exciting for like the whole family even to go and, pick out something new they've never tried before. I remember when I was a kid, I used to love going to the supermarket with my mom and, picking out like things that like, oh, what's this? Yeah, I want to give that a try. And I think that I don't have kids myself, but when I'm asked about how to get kids to be more interested in trying these healthy foods, I think that having them be a part of the process of picking out these foods, I think they feel more connected to it and they're more likely to be open minded about it if they're actually with you while you're choosing it. And, if you have a farmer's market near you, I mean, that's even better, that you can go and like see where the food, comes from and try different varieties of foods, like even when you go and you see like, oh, wow, there's all different carrots. Like not all carrots are orange, there's
Right.
like purple carrots and
That's
yellow
right.
carrots. And, it's
The
so
whole rainbow.
exciting. Whole rainbow. So, I think that, it's something that it doesn't matter how old you are, whether you're young or you're older, everyone can try new things and, just experience this. And it's really fun too.
It is. It is. I'm so glad you shared that. Thank you for sharing that memory of you shopping with your mom. I think that's
Oh, yeah.
so important. And it really kind of broadens, just the experience. Even if you don't, like the fruit, I think just having that experience for especially kids to just try new things. And you never know, like most of the time, like when I would introduce my kids to something new, most of the time they liked it.
Yeah.
Um, and then if they didn't, now you know, right? Like now you
Right.
know this new
Exactly.
food that you never knew about, and you can actually talk about it now.
Right.
So that's really awesome. I love that you mentioned that. So are there any like misconceptions like you've come across, like even just, blogging or just the information that you're sharing with your community? Like, are there any misconceptions that you're seeing out there regarding like, eating more like plant-based meals or introducing it into your diet? Like, what are some of the misconceptions that you're seeing out there?
Yeah, that is a great question, Janine. Of course, we have to address that one question that we hear all the time is, how am I going to get enough protein?
Oh,
Right?
yes.
I'm sure you've heard that
Oh,
before
yes.
too. And you know what? Here's the simple answer. All foods contain protein, even like, tomatoes and broccoli and potatoes. Every food contains some amount of protein. And the only people that have ever been discovered as protein deficient are people that are calorie deficient. So as long as you are eating enough per day, you are naturally getting as much protein as your body needs. So there's no reason to, really worry about getting enough protein. If you eat a well balanced variety of foods and take in enough calories per day, you are not going to need to worry. And in fact, most Americans actually get too much protein. And too much protein, especially a lot of the animal derived proteins, are really hard on the system. So someone may have, trouble later with their organs, especially like their kidneys. And, so there's really more danger in getting too much protein versus too little protein.
Wow.
And yeah, it's fascinating. And I think that they've also found that most Americans actually don't get enough fiber. So, that's one thing that I have to say, people that follow a plant-based or vegan diet, they really do not have to worry. I think that most of us who do, we get plenty of fiber. But, the typical American following a standard American diet probably gets too much protein and not enough fiber. So I think if
Wow.
we focus on the fiber part of it versus worrying about getting enough protein, I think that we'll all be a lot happier and healthier.
That is awesome. Okay, guys, look, you heard it here first. And she's a certified health coach. Okay. So she knows what she's talking about. I love that you said that because I always get that question too. And I'm not like 100% like, I eat a lot of vegetables, as you know.
Yes.
I eat a lot of vegetables. I can literally like go a whole week. I'm not vegan. I'm not vegetarian. I do every once in a while. Like we eat a lot of fish. We eat a lot of
Mm-hmm.
fish. A lot of chicken. My family eats a lot of chicken, but I can eat fish every day of the week. I love fish. Um, but you know, I don't know where I was going with that, but I was just going to say like you can literally just you know the whole like worry about not getting the protein, I think really is a huge misconception because like for me, like I said, I can go like a whole week without eating meat and I'm totally okay because I'm
Mm-hmm.
still getting all of those nutrients. Um, with the foods that I'm eating. So like I'm having like legume rich salads, or like I also take in a lot of smoothies. Like that's how I start my day off, with a smoothie. That's high in all kinds of nutrients and antioxidants and vitamins and fiber.
Yes.
um, but I think when you start, like really thinking of it as fueling your body, that whole like, okay, I'm not getting enough protein, like that will eventually kind of like, you'll become lighter, and that's not like your main concern, because you're introducing all of these nutrient dense and nutrient rich foods into your system, and your system, believe it or not, like it knows how to take care of itself as long as you're feeding it those nutrients, right? And
That's
so
absolutely right.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
I love that you went into that. And like I said, like, I don't really like to put so many labels on myself and my family. We just try our best to, just sustain a healthy and nutritious diet that's they're going to eat, that they're going to enjoy, but that's also good for our bodies.
Hmm.
So I really love that you went into that. Now, can you maybe go into kind of piggybacking off of that topic with, the concern of protein? Are there any particular foods that you would recommend, that are maybe protein rich, or I know like with fiber, like just about
Yeah.
there's not enough time, but like, are there any particular foods that you could say, okay, like these are really rich in protein, so maybe like having more of this, to supplement this will, make sure that you're getting in enough of that protein or whatever. Can you jump into that a
Yeah,
little bit more?
absolutely. Yeah, well, one thing to note too about the protein and fiber issue is that only plant based foods have fiber. So, animal based proteins, for example, are not going to, they'll have protein, but they won't have fiber in them. But if you have, say, a plant based protein like, a legume, then you're going to be getting protein along with the fiber. So it's, good for your body in that respect, but it can also help you feel fuller and more satiated for longer. So,
Okay.
my personal favorites, I absolutely love chickpeas. So I always have chickpeas in my pantry, and, you can buy them canned, you can buy them dried and cook them yourself. And, I think there's a wide variety of beans, like black beans, and there's kidney beans, cannellini beans, there's pinto beans. There's so many different kinds of
Yeah.
beans. And that's just getting into the basic ones. I mean, there are so many heirloom varieties that you can experiment with. But then there's, also things like nuts and seeds. And, those are things that, most of us, growing up, we might have had peanut butter or almond butter. Those are foods that we, I think most people really love. And so that's nothing weird. You can always
Yeah.
have your nut
Yeah.
butters, or just having like nuts and seeds like in your smoothies or your salads, or just as a snack, grabbing a handful of pistachios or cashews. So those are great sources of protein. But again, like all of the fruits and vegetables will have some amount of protein, but then also think about whole grains. Like, in particular, like quinoa is very popular, and quinoa is a very high protein content. Or if you're looking at like brown rice versus white rice, they're both fine to eat. They're both very nutritious, but brown rice is going to have extra protein. So, it's just, simple things like that. And these are foods that probably you already eat. So, or
Absolutely.
lentils, and, so there's just a wide variety. So,
Yeah.
it's not like you're going to be starting from scratch and trying all new things, and plus you can just, instead of eliminating everything at once, if you want to go more plant based, you can just say, hey, I'm just going to take one meal a week, like maybe one dinner a week, where instead of having chicken or fish, I'm going to go for something that's plant based and have maybe black beans instead.
Right.
Or things like tofu are great sources of protein. Maybe if you're not used to eating tofu, you maybe want to start off with something that you're already familiar with. But there's just so many different sources, and I think it helps too if we think more about all these different foods that we can eat versus, oh, okay, well, I can't eat that,
Right.
because it's that all or nothing mentality. I think it helps if we think about, oh, we have this huge abundance of foods that we get to eat and we get to try, and maybe we'll want to incorporate some of those into our diet, and maybe we try them and decide, hey, that's not for me, but I'll try something else. So there's just a never ending supply of things to try for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing all of those tips. My goodness, like you've even given me some ideas. So
Oh,
that was
great.
really amazing. Thank you, Amy. So kind of going, just continuing the conversation. Um, I wanted to ask you, like, what role does sustainability play in your approach to a plant-based nutrition, and how do you help your audience, kind of choose what's good, for their health, but obviously, what's good for the planet as well? So how does sustainability all come into play for you?
Yeah, that is a great question, Janine. I think, one of the things that we can do is think about what foods are local to us and kind of start there first. So if you do have the opportunity to shop, at a farmer's market or get produce from local CSA, or grow your own food, I think that is always going to be something you want to start with, and think about like how far does our food have to travel to get to our local supermarkets, and are these foods actually in season? It always helps if you can buy things that are actually in season. I know like a lot of supermarkets now, they are able to provide produce that is out of season but still have them all year round, because maybe they get them from like South America or someplace even farther, so that they're in season in those countries. But
Sure.
I think that it's always better to try to find foods that don't have to travel so far. And besides cutting down on that transportation cost of it, there's also going to be more nutrients if it's grown locally and is actually picked and shows up, in the market sooner versus traveling for a week or something like that. And besides like tasting better, it's going to be more nutritious. It'll be, because fruits and vegetables lose their nutrients over time. And then these foods will, last longer. Plus, it's exciting to eat with the seasons. So I guess if I had to sum it up, I would say that eating with the seasons is something that helps a lot. So, maybe you see like in April, you see zucchini at your supermarket, but really zucchini is not in season yet because it's a summer produce. So you can maybe wait and get it at the peak of freshness. And, and that's another thing to think about too. If you don't have access to a lot of these fresh fruits and vegetables, buying frozen is a great option too, because those foods are picked and frozen at the peak of freshness. So, it's perfectly fine. They have lots of nutrients in them, and a lot of times they're very affordable. And again, if you live in an area that's, maybe a food desert, or you just don't have access to transportation to get to a place that has fresh produce, I think that brine frozen is a great alternative.
I agree 100%. Thank you for saying that because I think that can be a misconception as well, right? I think
Yeah.
the frozen foods, I should say, frozen vegetables do get a bad rep sometimes because people just think that, oh, well, it's not fresh. But a lot of times it's just like what you said, they'll take them at peak and flash freeze them.
Hmm.
And that's actually a lot more, they have a lot more nutrients than like a canned option, for instance.
Oh, yeah, that's a
Um,
great point.
yeah, so I love that you mentioned frozen fruit or frozen vegetables and frozen fruit
And
as well.
frozen fruit too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So that's a really great. Thank you so much. That was
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Um,
Cause I know, you and I are both fortunate that we live in areas where we have so many choices for where to get our food. But, the sad reality is that, not everyone in this country, has access to that. So, I
Absolutely.
think that you just, you have to, find the best option where you are. And yeah,
Exactly.
frozen's definitely a good choice.
Absolutely, 100%. And that's something that I'm really passionate about as well, and really just recognizing that there are folks and families out there who are in areas that would be considered a food desert or don't have access to fresh ingredients, and so that frozen it really is the next best thing, right? Like
Yes.
from being able to pick fresh. So definitely, that's a really good option. So thank you for mentioning that. And then also you talked about just even you know, considering the transportation piece of it because I don't think people really understand the impacts of that. You lose the nutrition. The produce actually loses nutrition the longer in between it starts from the farm to the processing plant to the trucks, and now the trucks have
Hmm.
to find their ways across the country. So they do lose their nutrition. And thinking about that, a lot of times, I'm not saying this happens all the time, but sometimes that produce is having to be treated with products to help prolong their shelf life. So now you're
Oh,
dealing
yeah.
with all of the preservatives that have to be sprayed on them and things like that. So just because again it's a business, and so the longer they can make these uh, products and fruits and vegetables, this produce have a longer shelf life, they're treating them as well. So just something to keep in
Yeah.
mind, as we're spending our dollars and we're in our grocery stores and considering, what produce to get, I always veer towards the local stuff if I can, if it's
Yes.
available. And then, like what you said, also, not everyone has access to a farmer's market, but if you can find a local farmer and start that relationship, build those relationships, or a small fruit stand, things like that, that
Yeah.
really, it helps local farmers, but it also, like, it's just great all around. You're getting fresh produce, and it tastes better, you know?
Yes, absolutely. It
So,
tastes
yeah,
better.
just wanted to mention that as well.
Yeah, and that reminded me of something else too. There's also a movement now, to stop, a lot of produce from going into the landfill. And there's this ugly produce term that you may have heard. And
Yes.
yeah, I also like to get produce from. There's several companies, but the one I use is called Imperfect Foods, and they have relationships with like different farmers, and they save a lot of the produce that is rejected by the supermarkets because, like, say there's like apples that look smaller than the other apples, or there's potatoes that are funny shaped,
Hmm.
things like that. So they are able to acquire this produce that would otherwise go to waste, and they can pass it on to consumers for a lower price. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It just might look a little bit different, but it
Yeah,
still is fresh, and there's nothing, it still tastes great. And that's another way that people can look into, not only being able to save money, but also finding produce that would normally get thrown out, and so you're kind of saving it. So
exactly.
that's something that's I feel is important to do as well.
That's such a great idea. Thank you so much because I didn't even think about that, but you're so right. You have these they section them off kind of like misfits, right? And
Right,
it's like but
right.
there's nothing wrong with them, like they're just unique, but
Exactly.
they're still nutritious and
Exactly.
delicious.
Yeah, that's actually the name of another company that does it. It's called Misfits Market.
Oh goodness, that's funny.
Yeah,
That's hilarious.
yeah.
No, that's a really great that's a great point that you made. So, I'm loving this conversation, by the way. Like this is so much fun and I'm absolutely loving this. I wanted to ask you another thing too, because you've got a huge following. Folks are following your blog and following you on social media and everything. How would you, and I would imagine, you get this question all the time too, but what advice do you have for people who are really just genuinely interested in just adopting a healthier um, lifestyle, but then also introducing more plant-based, like options into their diets, but they're not sure, they don't know where to start, they're kind of scared or intimidated by, like social media does that sometimes to us.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you gave some ideas earlier, but can you kind of, like go a little bit deeper into that? Like what would be a good first step for someone who's really like, okay, I'm ready, but I don't know where to start?
Yeah, I think that a good starting place is to think about all of the meals that you already eat and know how to cook that are already plant based. So start with those, and then think about the ones that maybe, have meat in them, and think about like, okay, if I do still want to eat that, like what is a way that I can make it but without the meat. And, I know that there are a lot of, plant-based options that are on the market now that are good transitional foods. Like, for example, if someone is used to cooking with ground beef, they can buy these plant-based ground beef alternatives. And usually they're made with like things like pea protein or maybe soy or gluten, or there's a wide variety of options for these. And maybe ideally you don't want to base your entire way of eating around these foods, but they are a great transitional food. And also just something to enjoy once in a while. Like, I don't purchase a lot of these products, but every once in a while I will, and my family loves them. Or when you're going out to eat, a lot of the places have like these veggie burgers that taste very similar to what you're used to eating with meat, but they're made from plants. So I think that there's nothing wrong with trying those kind of foods too and seeing what you like, because it's too hard to go from eating a certain way and then, drastically changing it. I think that it's hard mentally, it's hard physically on your body. And it's just not sustainable. It's something where maybe, yeah, you'll try it for a week, but then you're going to go back to the way that you're used to eating because this new way is just too hard because
Right.
it's just so different. So I think, going as slow as you can and, not making drastic changes helps a lot. Like me personally, I, I didn't go vegan overnight. I mean, in fact, like I started when I was a teenager. I stopped eating red meat, but I still ate like fish and chicken, like seafood, other poultry, and all of that. And it took me years and years and years to decide, hey, I don't want to eat this anymore. And one of the last foods that I stopped eating was eggs because not only did I like eggs, but eggs are like in a lot of baked goods. And, so it's one of those
Yeah.
things where, okay, well, it's just in the food. I don't feel like I'm actually eating it, but
Right.
even though it's there. So, but it's totally fine, like to just go as slow as you need to. So I think, not putting pressure on yourself, that would be, the number one thing that I would say to people is, everyone's on their own timeline and everyone's on their own journey. So you don't need to like look to social media and like feel that pressure, like, oh, I have to do it this way. Or,
Yeah.
this person said to do it that way. There's, we can all, go along our own individual paths. And yeah, we'll all end up, in the same place eventually. But, there's just not one way of looking at it. It's different
Yeah.
for each person.
That's such great advice. That really, it truly, truly is, and it does, put it back on the individual and what works for them, and doing what's best for your body, right?
Right.
Not forcing something or just putting that pressure of okay, like I've got to do this cold turkey and I got to do it now type thing.
Yeah.
You really set
Yeah.
yourself up for failure, don't you think? Like,
You
and
do,
that,
absolutely. And I think that's why we see, like in the media, we see like a lot of celebrities, it's kind of like a trendy thing, like, oh, I'm going vegan, and then you see like the next year they're no longer vegan.
yeah,
And,
yeah,
they're saying like, oh, I got so sick and, it was terrible for
yeah,
me. But really it's because, they didn't do it right. They just trying to do it overnight, and maybe they didn't have all the information that they needed or the resources. And there's just no point in that, because there's no timeline. So
right.
I think it's just better to do what you can when you can. And again, not everyone has to be vegan. I'm personally vegan, but I don't say that anyone else has to be. It's just, if you want to try these foods, I think that's fantastic. But you have to do what's right for yourself.
Absolutely. Well, I'm really excited about the recipe that you're sharing with our Cook the Garden community, and I think it's the perfect recipe to just kind of get a taste of, a delicious and nutritious plant-based meal. Guys, check out my social media because I am going to be sharing Amy's amazing recipe. But Amy, would you mind just kind of sharing the recipe and kind of walking us through what this week's recipe is? I'm excited.
Yes, yes, I'm excited too. So, this recipe is a green pepper salad with tomatoes. And I was inspired to make this salad because some friends of mine gave me a basket full of their beautiful produce that they had grown in their backyard. And, I think that green peppers are one of those ingredients that not, some people shy away from. Like a lot of people like red bell peppers or like some of the other colors like orange and yellow because they're sweeter because, they've ripened longer. But green peppers a lot of times just get relegated to like, oh, okay, we're going to just saute these and hide them in some other dishes, but we don't usually make them the star of the show. So what I did is I took these beautiful green peppers that I received and I just chopped them up into kind of a large dice. And then I combine them with some different color heirloom tomatoes. And, heirloom tomatoes are just fantastic. And I think
Love them.
I mean, if you can, find some this, in the summer, they are just wonderful and you can enjoy them in so many different ways. And they're just beautiful to look at because they're all, in, they all look unique and they're different colors. Some of them have stripes,
Yep.
so they're really fun. So I chop those up, and then I like to add some green olives. And, I know not everyone loves green olives, but if you like that tangy, kind of briny flavor, they really go well with the green bell pepper and the tomatoes. But if you don't like green olives, you can just leave those out. And if you like black olives, you can use those. Or you can use something entirely different like avocado. You can dice that up.
Ooh,
Yeah. So,
yes.
and it's really versatile. And then for the dressing, it's just a simple combination of olive oil and red wine vinegar. And then what really brings it together, I think, is the fresh parsley. So, fresh parsley has like almost a like lemony flavor. It's just,
Yeah.
just this wonderful freshness. So just adding those simple ingredients with some salt and pepper, that's all you need. And it just really brings out the flavors of the produce. And, I am very excited because, like I said earlier, I'm going to be starting my spring garden soon. So, and that just reminded me that I need to plant some green bell peppers as well. So
Yeah.
I can have this. But yeah, it's just one of those dishes that you can serve it as a side. And you can also, kind of boost it with, if you want to make it more substantial, you can add some canned chickpeas to it, or like white beans, any bean really. You can throw in some like maybe pine nuts would be great.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just it's really really up to you. You can start with the basic recipe and then kind of embellish it from there and make it your own. So yeah, I hope that
Yeah.
everyone enjoys it.
Oh, I can't wait to try it. And it's so funny. I love it because I just love versatile recipes where you could just switch it up. And I love that you're using easily accessible items, like you're not using
Yeah.
this like crazy, like,
Oh
ingredient
yeah.
that's hard to find. You can really, really and you can make this seasonal based off of what's available. Add in some seasonality in there. So during the fall, you can make it a fall type of salad and maybe
Yeah.
put in some, sweet potatoes to kind of, um,
Mm-hmm.
give it some, substance if you want something a little bit filling. Those sweet
Yeah,
potatoes are like
that's a great
butternut
idea.
squash. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Or you could, green beans would be great with it. Just to
Yeah. Oh,
blanch
yes.
them, for a few minutes, and so they're still nice and crisp. Those would be a great
Absolutely.
addition. Yeah, and or onion. You can add fresh onion to it.
Yeah.
And like I said. About using heirloom tomatoes, of course you can use whatever tomatoes that you like.
Sure.
And, cherry tomatoes would be great. Just your, standard like salad tomatoes, anything that is available where you live, that would be perfect in this recipe.
That's so great. Thank you. And that reminds me, so tomatoes and I have a love-hate relationship because I tell you what, I have the hardest time growing tomatoes here in Florida. But I had such success last year with these yellow pear tomatoes. They were
Oh,
they were just everywhere and they were so delicious, so sweet. And I was so
oh,
proud
that's
of myself. I'm
great.
like, oh my gosh, this is like the best harvest of any kind of tomato I've ever grown. So,
Wow.
yeah, I'm growing them again this year and I'm going to be using some in that salad. I mean, but that just goes to show like you can literally use like any tomato you have on
Oh, yeah.
hand. It's so versatile and I'm immediately thinking of those yellow pear tomatoes. They're
Oh
going to be
yeah,
amazing.
those are great. And I love like the smaller like yellow and orange tomatoes. They have such a
Yeah,
great sweet flavor. It's
they
almost like
do.
candy.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I could just
Yeah.
pop them in my mouth.
It's a nice little snack.
It
So
really
that's
is.
yeah, that's so amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing that recipe. I will definitely include that in your show notes, Amy. A link going directly to that full recipe for those of you who would like to make it along with myself. So super excited. So
Yeah.
before we wrap it up, because I'm totally loving this and I can literally talk to you all day, but I'm not going to do that. I know you've got a lot going on too, but I wanted to ask you, I forgot to ask you earlier when we were talking about sustainability and bringing it all together. How do you prevent food waste? Because that's another topic that I'm super passionate about. And I'm trying to be a little bit more intentional about just, limiting food waste in general. How do you go about doing that?
Yeah, you know what? I actually that is very important to myself as well, and it is something that sometimes I struggle with. So
Yeah.
I am trying to get better at it as well. But one of the things that I like to do is once I know, like I kind of base my meals around what produce I have. So I focus on buying whatever fresh produce is in season. And then I base my meals around that. So my goal is that I'm not wasting any of the produce. And I try to use whatever's going to go bad the quickest. I try to use that first. And then things that are longer lasting, I know that I can put those off a little bit and not worry about those so much. So, some
Yeah.
of the hardier things like, broccoli, cauliflower, carrots, celery, onions, those are going to last a lot longer. Or like
Yeah.
you mentioned, like winter squash, those will definitely are more hardy. But the things that are going to spoil faster, I make a definite effort to use those up faster. And
Yeah.
one of the things that I do is I like to have a big salad for lunch every day, or most days. So that's a great way to use a lot of the produce that you have on hand. And then what I will do is when I am getting towards like the end of the week and I have a lot of I have leftover produce that I want to make sure doesn't spoil. I'll make something like a big soup
Yeah.
or like roast the vegetables, or even like if I want to make a main meal, I'll do something like with chickpeas and potatoes and then whatever vegetables I have, and I'll just roast that all together. So I just try to make a concerted effort to actually use up whatever I have. And what I
Yeah.
found too is really important for myself is I don't want to forget what I have. So I'll make sure that I look through the produce bin and actually
Yeah.
like notice like what is in there. And, I've heard some people even put to a checklist and put that on their refrigerator door so that they can see, okay, this is everything I bought that I don't want, that I want to make sure I use for the week. And then they just, cross them out once they've used them. So that is a great idea that I can't remember who I learned that from, but, shout out
That's
to
a
whoever
great
that was. But
Yeah, that's a great idea.
yeah,
I may
yeah,
try that.
yeah, I
That's a
think it's a
really
great
excellent
idea.
idea.
Yeah,
I totally agree.
absolutely.
Thank you for
Absolutely.
saying that because I think there's and I suffer from it as well. I think, you're not alone. So just know
Yeah,
that,
it's a
Amy.
struggle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're all working on it. But I think you said something so important. Being just aware enough and mindful enough to know, like, okay, let me check what I have. Let me see where we are. And I think when you make that concerted effort, it does make a big difference, So
Yeah.
I try to be as, conscious about it as possible. Like, okay, what do I have? And I do what I do normally towards the end of the week when I've got like random things, or maybe I don't have enough for like, a certain dish or whatever. I make a fried rice and
Oh,
I literally
yeah.
throw everything in there. It's just like, I should call it like fried rice, like the kitchen sink and everything else. Like there's
Yeah.
there's everything in it, but it's great. And when I think about, you mentioned
Yeah.
soups are a great way to utilize those, ingredients that, are maybe on the verge of going bad,
Hmm.
and just throwing them in their stews. But yeah, the fried
Yeah,
rice, my
I
family
love
loves the
that.
fried rice.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely love fried rice too. That is such a great idea.
Yeah, for sure. Well, look, this has been so much fun, Amy. I really just appreciate you coming on and sharing your knowledge, and I've gotten some really great ideas, and this recipe is like the bomb, so I can't wait to try it. But before we wrap up, Amy, can you share a little bit? Do you have like any special projects coming up or just anything you would like to share with the audience?
Yeah, in fact, I do have a special project that I am working on now, and it's a collaboration that I'm doing with, I think it's at least 20 other vegan friendly food bloggers. And we are compiling some exclusive recipes and creating an ebook. So it's going to be
Ooh,
very exciting. So it's going to have all different recipes based on what people's specialty is, what they like to cook, and what they showcase on their blogs and websites. So I'm very excited. It's in the works now, and it's going to be available for purchase for a short amount of time, sometime in September. So stay
okay.
tuned for that. And if you want to make sure that you don't miss out on anything, you can sign up for my newsletter at veggiessavetheday.com, and then you will be alerted about everything I have going on, about the upcoming ebook, and of course, all of my latest recipes.
Oh my goodness. I'm so excited about that ebook. That's going to be amazing. And it just sounds like it's just going to be just a plethora of amazing recipes. If it's going to be a collab with all these other food
Yeah,
creators,
absolutely.
that's so awesome. I'm so happy for you, and I love your growth. And so, just keep on doing what you're doing because you're so inspiring. You've inspired me so much. Just even through my food blogging journey, you've poured so much into me and supporting this podcast. So I'm truly, truly just grateful for you, Amy.
Oh, thank you so much, Janine. And, it's really my pleasure. I love talking to you. I always have such a great time when we get to chat. And,
Yes.
I think this is a fantastic podcast. I hope that everyone listens, and I am excited to see your future success as well.
Thank you. I really do appreciate all of that. And thank you, those of you who are listening. And I will go ahead and make sure to put all of this information in our show notes. I'll include Amy's website and all the ways to get in touch with her on the socials and all that good stuff, including the recipes. So thank you all again for listening. And thank you, Amy, for being here. Have a blessed week, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to this week's Cook the Garden. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave a 5-star review. As a new podcast, it really helps to add value while growing our awesome community. As always, I really appreciate it. Until next time, friends, keep slaying those garden fresh recipes.